Hello YouTube, and welcome to my channel. This time I thought I would talk about whether or not Jehovah's Witnesses are really the happiest people on the earth. If you've been one of Jehovah's Witnesses for any amount of time, if you were raised as one, you're used to hearing how Jehovah's Witnesses are the happiest people there are. Is that really the case? In my more than 30 years experience, is that what I really saw? Well, if you think about the message that Jehovah's Witnesses preach, which is basically that God's kingdom is going to step in at any moment and correct all the problems and get rid of all the wicked people, and then he's going to restore us all to perfection. Well, the type of people that would be most drawn to that message are people that have serious problems. And this tends to be the type of people who typically respond. People with serious issues. Now, that's not universally true. There are some other people that respond that don't have serious issues. But in my experience as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, especially when serving as an elder, I remember hearing from a circuit overseer that in most congregations, at least 30% of the publishers are dealing with some form of depression. And to the best of my knowledge, that percentile is above the percentage that deal with that in the general population. So right there, that kind of defeats the claim that Jehovah's Witnesses are the happiest people on the earth. In fact, that is data that proves that they may be the saddest people on the earth. But you might say that's just a few people that have problems because they've been dealing with the anxieties of this system of things. But is that the case? Well, in my experience growing up, what type of people that I typically associate with? And looking back in retrospect, most of the families that had children that were around my age, typically speaking, had some level of issue they were dealing with, be it mild to severe. And I don't know, you might be able to say that about any segment of the population, but from my experience, a lot of families and Jehovah's Witnesses don't actually operate all that normally. And that's partly because they truthfully can't. There's all kinds of rules and regulations that have to be met, and if the children don't meet those rules and regulations, well, it looks bad on the parents. And if the parents are interested in making spiritual advancement, well, they have to have their children in line. So when children are children and they don't quite toe the line, that the parents come down on them pretty hard. And that's a commonplace thing. So of the families that I grew up with, one of them, when they came into the truth, one individual had an extremely bad temper. I remember one of my friends telling me how when he was really young, he actually remembers hiding out on one of the roofs with one of his parents because the other parent had an extremely ferocious temper. And so when they came into the truth, when they became Jehovah's Witnesses, apparently that parent was able to get that under control. But that being said, that particular parent who had that temper problem still was prone to getting quite angry at times and came down quite hard on their children on a number of different occasions. And their children had to be exemplary in every way, shape, or form, or that parent would give them quite a hard time. And that parent was extremely proficient, shall we say, with motivating them to do watchtower activities and ensuring that they got all their study done, they were out in field service, and what have you. And that's one family. I remember another family that I grew up with. The one parent was not an active Jehovah's Witness, but had been raised as such. But this family had a lot of children. So the parent that was still the active Jehovah's Witness was the disciplinarian, except they were really bad at it. They would yell at their kids, and their kids would in turn raise their voice back at the parent, and the parent would just turn and laugh. So discipline in that household was not all that effective. In other family I grew up with, I think 2 out of 3 of them had severe depression issues or other emotional issues. And I think their father, who never became one of Jehovah's Witnesses, he at least had dyslexia, and I think some other, dyslexia is not an emotional issue, but he had some other issues that I believe were emotional in nature, and I believe their mother had emotional issues as well. Other families that I was raised with. A lot of them had issues. There were people that came and went when I was very young. There was someone my age that we hung around with sometime. I just remember his mother always flying off and yelling about stupid little stuff. Just being crazy about that. We had another family that had kids both a lot older than me and my age. And their parents were kind of earthy, crunchy type people. They believed in a lot of holistic type cures, except that the health type things that they believed in, there was no clinical data to prove that they even worked, and they believed in all kinds of weird health practices, which for some reason was not looked down upon, but there were a number of talks about utilizing uncanny practices in your healthcare, and the things that they did, in my opinion, would have been over that line, at least the parents, not the kids. So there were a lot of really interesting characters in Jehovah's Witnesses. And as I grew up, myself, I had my own issues, because my family did as well, and I dealt with them to the best that I could. But I was always getting the perspective of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was always trying to go back and fit things into the mold that I was taught they should fit into. And a lot of things just never made sense to me. Now, another family I remember, one of the parents had been chemically poisoned, so they couldn't work anymore, and they were home all the time. And that parent was a big-time authoritarian. So we had a lot of interesting parents. And when I was growing up, that had friends of mine and whatnot. So I don't know how that compares to not being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, because I can't go back and do it again. But all I'm saying here is that their claim to be the happiest people on earth doesn't seem to add up. I knew a lot of people as Jehovah's Witnesses that were dealing with various levels of depression. And as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you are basically taught on some level that if you are not joyful, it is a sign that the Holy Spirit is not active upon you. This at least was the teaching for most of the time. So when people dealt with depression, it was thought, well, the way to solve that was by praying more, by studying more, by getting out in service more. And of course, those things will never truly address clinical depression. Now, later on, the organization kind of eased up on some of those things, and they kind of realized that there could be medical issues involved which they didn't understand. But in my entire experience as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, a truly good organization person never really understands the way things like depression works or mental or emotional issues. They're totally ignorant of it. And they think that by adhering to the society's routine of spiritual things that you can overcome those things. And they don't understand how that's not possible. So that being the case, that type of an approach to those problems doesn't tend to make it better. It tends to make it worse. So a lot of people who try to buy into the routine, who have those issues, instead of being better, wind up getting worse. And that is what my experience is. And this is the case regardless of what level of spiritual accomplishments you have achieved in the organization. I've known elders with those problems. I've known pioneers with those problems. I've known regular publishers with those problems. And I have heard of circuit overseers who have had to leave the work because of having such problems. But that is just a secondhand count that I cannot personally verify. And if you step back and look at what it takes to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses, it's really the type of thing that is prone to making somebody mentally and emotionally unhealthy. You take the person that you really are and you put that aside to pursue nothing but the organization's goals. So what I mean by that is each one of us has things that we would like to do. We have dreams. We have things we would like to pursue. But if you are one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you are told to put every single one of your dreams on hold and to pursue spiritual goals. You are told that you will be able to recognize your dreams in the new system after Armageddon. So this has been the story pretty much as long as Jehovah's Witnesses have been around. So there are people who are now very elderly who have been told for their entire life that the new system is coming at any moment. And you should just put aside your dreams and wait till the new system when you can fulfill those dreams as a perfect person. So their whole life, they may have ignored what they really wanted to do and put that aside to do what the organization has told them to do. And some people may have enjoyed that. I actually do know individuals who just enjoyed working with other individuals. So here's another interesting point, is the organization always tells you how much we enjoy conventions and how much we enjoy new releases and how much we enjoy the theocratic work, what have you. But every time I really ask people what it is that they really enjoy, people don't seem to remember the talks at conventions. They remember being with other people. They remember their friends. So when it comes down to it, in my experience and from my discovery, what people really enjoy about being one of Jehovah's Witnesses is not the so-called spiritual feeding that they're getting or the knowledge of the truth, but it's just being with other people. So in reality, when you come down to it, being one of Jehovah's Witnesses is just another way of providing people with community. But how does that community actually treat the people? Well, the Jehovah's Witness community demands incredible amounts of service from their followers. They demand strict adherence to rules, some of which are good and some of which are not. And they demand unquestioning obedience. They ask you to shut off your thinking skills and to blindly agree with whatever you're taught that comes from the governing body. And you are basically taught to treat the governing body as if they speak from God. To question the governing body is viewed as probably one of the worst sins you can commit. That is getting towards apostasy. And if you don't repent from that one very quick, you will find yourself in big trouble. In fact, if you ever question that, just try to get into a group of witnesses and question any one of the governing body's teachings. Sometimes you may find people that will agree, but most oftentimes when you're with good Jehovah's Witnesses, you will find people who will rapidly change a topic or who will tell you that you're being sinful or something along those lines for questioning the teachings of the governing body. And all of those things have a direct impact on your happiness as a person. We each need to be able to think for ourselves, to process things freely, and to decide what our beliefs are based on the evidence. When that right is taken away from you, and it is a right, I'll even go so far as to call it a God-given right. But when the God-given right to make your own decisions about what you believe based on the evidence is taken away from you, it puts you in a situation where right away your happiness cannot help but be compromised. And this is the situation of Jehovah's Witnesses. And this was my experience for my entire life. I spent long periods of time being extremely frustrated because despite the fact that I was doing everything that I was told would make me happy, I wasn't happy. I was miserable. I was upset that things didn't work out. I felt at times like my life was being stolen from me. I felt like I wasn't in charge of my own life. The more service I did to Jehovah, the more I felt that way. Because I couldn't get to do things that I wanted to do. I always sacrificed that in the name of Jehovah. And despite the fact you're always told that you'll never regret any service that you render to Jehovah, that statement is not true. They say that to make you want to serve and to make you feel guilty when you don't feel good about serving. But anyways, that's the truth about Jehovah's Witnesses. At least that's my experience. You can think of that what you will. But thank you for listening, YouTube. Talk to you next time.